times that our home or a home is a place of safety for everybody. And that's not always the case. There are many people who are struggling with homelessness or risk of homelessness. They're struggling with relationships within the home, and that can impact our mental health. I think one of the most important things to think about is with life situations, especially the cost of living crisis currently, people are struggling with keeping employment or finding employment, that sometimes a home is not a safe space. And I think that can show up for people in different ways. It's very individual. So I think it's really closely linked.
Hey, we were talking earlier actually with some professional cleaners about the whole thing of the importance of having a cleaner if you don't have time to do it yourself, but also about how you cope with that. And I was laughing about the fact that I feel like I have to tidy everything before my cleaner comes, because otherwise I feel ashamed. And you know, one of the things we say about it is shine, not shame. You know, we're not kind of saying that everybody has to have perfect homes, everything. So how do you see that relationship between somebody feeling shameful about having someone come into the home? Not everyone's comfortable with having someone come into their homes, are they?
Not everybody's comfortable with it at all, and sometimes, you know, you can really see that fear, that terror. They may have not let anybody in the property for years, decades in some cases when we enter. And one of our core values is no judgment. You know, nobody has the right to judge another human being, and if everybody was just that little bit more kind and understanding of different circumstances, maybe there'll be more people willing to put their hands up and accept that help. So we're sort of on a mission with training courses and on social media and things like that to enable people to have that sort of mindset that not everybody's house is going to be a palace. You know, sometimes it is, as you say, Joanna, not a safe place at all, but it is okay to ask for that support and that help.
And Donna, how are you passionate about helping people with challenges, would you say?
So we recognise that there's lots of people in this country that are struggling with hoarding. It could be up to 5-6% of people, and that's a huge amount of people. So I want to be part of a community that are helping people to live in a house that they feel a bit happier in, because so many people who are living in a hoarded property, and that's like quite high level hoarders, aren't happy of how they're living, but they're just too scared or fearful of asking for any help. So the more I can shout out about the help that's out there and come to places like this and people can meet me and they see who I am, hopefully then they'll come forward and ask for help.
And Nicola, in your experience, how does mental health and having help in the home, how do the two come together?
I think for myself, I do have anxiety disorder and OCD. And for me, I think to have a home that's organised and functional helps you massively with your mental health. So I work with a lot of clients that may have a very stressful situation going on, that if they've got everything in their home filed, labelled, they know where everything is, it takes that pressure off of their day-to-day life of where's this, where's that. If they're in a relationship that's very toxic or abusive, I help them to manifest their energy into keeping their home nice, so it sort of helps eliminate the bad stuff that's going on, and it also helps when they're ready to get out of that relationship. They know where everything is if they need to quickly flee straight away. So I think that is massively important.
Joanna, what would you say are the challenges that people face when it comes to their homes when they have mental health issues?
I think if somebody's struggling with their mental health, it can show up, as I said, in many different ways. It could be that there's lack of energy, being able to get up and just organise their home. It could be that they don't want to open letters because they're struggling with anxiety and fear and worry around money, which then can lead to their rent or mortgage not being paid and further financial worries. It can also be isolation and loneliness, and I think since the pandemic there's been an increase in people experiencing isolation and loneliness, even if they're living with other people in their homes. So I think one of the most important things, and our team at Minded Tower Hamlets Newman Redbridge, what we try to do is connect with people and make sure that people aren't struggling alone. So we're finding since the pandemic, and even prior to the pandemic, that sometimes services expect people to come in to as an open door. We have our doors open and people should come in. But I think one of the things that we've looked at over the last year, and a lot of mental health charities are exploring, and even the NHS mental health services, is that we can't always wait for someone to come to us. Because usually when people walk through a door, they're coming in crisis. It could be that it's a financial crisis, it could be the mental health crisis, but I think the most important thing that we are trying to do and that we're encouraging the community to do is have a community response to mental health, to reach out to people, connect with them, ask them twice, are you okay? Is everything going okay for you? Can I help you in some way? And really just start those conversations.
That's interesting, because I was just wondering, how difficult do people find it to reach out for that help?
Some people can find it really difficult to reach out for help. So we're a charity, a mental health charity in East London, and one of our projects, which is a Stigma project, and we've got some of the ladies here today, it's all about meeting people where they feel most comfortable. Now we've had over 400 women access the project over the last 3 years, and one of our surveys recently identified that 80% of the women didn't know where to go for support before the project. And the project is for diverse Muslim women, so we meet in mosques, in safe spaces that women identify for themselves, so it's not easy to reach out for help.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's interesting, Nicola, because this is touching on, you're talking about domestic abuse, and how do you see that relationship between the home, but also wanting to reach out for help as well?
I think it's very, very hard to accept that you are in that situation, and it took me 2 years to realise what was happening to me. And then where do you go? Who can help you? With what I was going through, I didn't have physical scars, and it's finding that area of, I need to get out, where do I go, what help is there, which is why I'm trying to help as many women as I can now through my work, that they'll open up to me and say this is happening to me, and I'm able to educate them on the police side of things, going to the domestic violence unit of how they can get a restraining order, evidence they need in order to go to the police and say this is what's happening to me. And it's a very, very daunting situation to be in, but once you've accessed those areas and you've got all those things in place, you can then start your new life again, which is what I've had to do.
Are you comfortable talking to us about how you managed to get that help and how you managed to change your situation?
Yeah, I did go to the police because my ex-partner had put a price on my face and also had made a lot of threats towards me and my family. The domestic violence unit were fantastic, that they straight away got me a restraining order for a year. I was able to find somewhere else to live through my ex-husband. Then I went to go and see a life coach and a therapist to help me understand about narcissistic behaviour, toxic behaviour. And then it was, I need to get a new car because he'd had GPS trackers put over my car. And then once I'd started doing the therapy and educating, and then developed my Essex Dolly brand, totally changed my life.
Well, I'm interested in, when you're going through all that, how important is your home to you when you're going through all that?
Massively, because I literally had to flee overnight with my son, and we had nowhere. And because my son is autistic, I couldn't go to a refuge or a hostel, and it was his dad that said, because it was my ex-partner, not my son's dad, he could see what was going on, and he said, you're going to have to come and live here with our son, spend 4 months here till you've got your restraining order, you've got a safe place, he doesn't know where you are. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, of leaving somebody that is that obsessive and dangerous, but it's been the best thing that I've ever done to start my new life again now.
Fantastic, I want to give it. Donna, what would you say are the daily challenges that people struggling with mental health are?
I guess it's very different from person to person, so I can just speak about the people that I see and I work with. And their challenges are the feeling of isolation, as said before, not knowing where to go for help. And when we're not feeling our best, should be the time when the help is openly there, but people have to search for it, and it's so hard to search for it when you're not feeling in tip-top condition. So it's so hard for people to find a way through, and they just feel stuck, overwhelmed, and just it's almost like they're in a box that they just can't find their way out of. So organisations like all of us, we really have to do our bit to make sure people know we're there.
And although we are a lot more open about having these discussions, I think, would you say there's still shame around admitting they're struggling and reaching out for help?
For hoarding, absolutely. The majority of the public see it as people being lazy, people being dirty. It's absolutely not that. People are struggling with their mental health. They want to change things. They just don't know how to. They may be living in unsafe properties. They recognise that, but they just don't know how to move forward, and they can be so overwhelmed that the ability to move forward has just made them freeze and stuck. So it's not recognised by the general public, and hoarding is a recognised mental health condition now as well. So we need to recognise it, and all of us need to talk about it, whether we're living in a hoarded property or not, and then hopefully people will openly talk about it more themselves.
What's your advice to someone, whether they're a friend, relative, neighbour? Because maybe sometimes it's not possible for that person themselves to reach out, but maybe somebody else around them wants to find a solution, or at least some way to help them. What's your advice to them?
I think if you're someone around them, it's really important to educate yourself first, rather than go in there all guns blazing, because that can just ruin relationships. So really educate yourself first, find out what's surrounding the area. We run free support groups, and there are other support groups up and down the country, so find out what's on offer, and then you really just have to pick your moment when you're talking to your family, friend or relative, and just gently offer support and say you're there when they're ready.
So we're talking about hoarding there, and I feel like we want to come back to that as well, but maybe we go to the other side of it when it comes to excessive cleaning. Faye, what's your experience of, obviously your cleaning is your passion, but have you ever seen it on the other side of that, where it's tipped over to the other side, not necessarily for you, but for people that you've come into contact with?
I have, yes. I've worked with a variety of people. I also work in Mind, actually, up in Newcastle, with people who need home hygiene help. And I see a lot of people that are on the other side of the scale. So I will go into properties that haven't been cleaned for 10, 15 years, that are really at extreme levels and dangerous levels of dirt. But I will also help people create manageable tasks, smaller tasks, breaking things down so that they're not constantly cleaning. And I'll also signpost to listening ear services and to different counselling services and support groups to really try and find these people to help, because I feel passionate about helping anybody that needs, cleaning advice or help, whether it's to clean less or to do more or something like that. But absolutely, I do see this on a regular basis, and I kind of feel that these people are almost brushed to one side a little, and they think, there's no problem there. Actually, there's a big problem there, and I want to try and help to become a voice for these people to have equal amounts of support also.
Donna, I'm interested in your take on this as well, like both the hoarding and the OCD side of things.
Well, I think what's really important, and I think it's demonstrated today, is for us to share our own experience. And I think as leaders, we have a great programme and an approach in mind that says that it's leadership at all levels. Now, we have an amazing peer leadership programme that brings people's lived experience into supporting others. And so I think there is the shame and stigma, not wanting to open your door if your house has become unmanageable for you, not wanting to say to somebody, look, I need help, can you support me? But I think when we start modelling vulnerability and saying, actually, it's okay to not be okay at times, it's okay to reach out for help, and that you're not alone. I think there is no magic potion for dealing with our mental health. I think just early support, making sure that services are available, they're fit for purpose, and that we care about what we do. So I think anyone that works with people with mental health, and I don't even think we can separate ourselves from that. I think we all have a mental health, and at any times throughout our lives, our mental health can be impacted. And I think that modelling and leadership and vulnerability, right from the top, from any one of us, really helps to support people to say, actually, I'm not alone and I actually can talk about it.
I haven't checked with the audience. Does anybody want to say anything or ask any questions at the moment? We'll ask again at the end, but just in case you wanted to ask. Okay. Nicola, I'm interested with your background of what you went through. When you go into other people's homes, what is it something that you kind of keep your eye open for? I suppose is people struggling, and how do you do
Massively.
that? And what do you do about that as well?
Through my experience, I've learnt how to pick up signs of things, and also to be there as a pair of ears to listen. So a lot of girls that I've worked with, families that I work with, they start to use me a bit like a therapist. So when they start opening up and saying little things like, my husband's not very happy with me because I went out last night, and I sort of, while I'm doing my job, I'll be listening, and I never pass judgment, but I'll drop little hints to sort of say, do you think that's acceptable? Are you happy with that? And there's been a few ladies already over the last 2 years that I've actually helped and supported, that they could safely leave that relationship, and they knew all the things that they had to do for their own safety. So I did have a lady about 6 months ago that had to leave her relationship, and she was frightened about her safety. So I was able to give her my CCTV man's number to get all her cameras installed. I then referred her to the domestic violence unit because she had evidence that she did need a restraining order. And then also through your local council, if they see that you are high risk, they can give you a grant through Safe Partnerships to put extra security on your house. So knowing those things because of my background was why then I was able to say to her, this is what you can do. So my Essex House Dolly isn't just making your home amazing, it's checking in on your mental health and are you safe and are you okay, and your children.
Because it's interesting, isn't it? Because actually sometimes you don't know what's behind closed doors.
No.
That actually people can appear very different on the outside to home. I mean, Donna, what do you find with your line of business in that respect?
Yeah, totally. You don't know what's behind closed doors. We work in multi-million pound mansions to the smallest bed sit in the middle of the city. You just don't know what's going on in someone's life behind closed doors. And like what was mentioned earlier, mental health is part of all of us. We've all got different levels of how we're managing our mental health. And at sometimes in life, everyone's dips a bit, and it's how you cope with that and what help you've got around you.
And actually it's not just, if you've gone to a degree where you have OCD or hoarding, but sometimes it's just actually life is getting on top of you, isn't it? It's not just it's not necessarily. We're talking here about I think we all go through times in life where we'd like to feel better, so it's actually reaching out for that help in that respect as well. Somebody just put their hand up, or is that my imagination? Do we have? Oh, here we go. Anthony. Oh, there you are.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. My name is Marianne and I'm a Neom resident. I just wanted a question for Joanna to say for the residents of Neom, how can they access your services?
So if you live in Tower Hamlets, Newham or Redbridge, you can access our services really straightforwardly. You can go onto our website and complete an online registration form. It's really, I think as well, if you are not digitally included, that you can call our telephone number at 0207 510 1087. But equally so, if you don't live in Newham, you can reach out to National Mind. National Mind have an info line, and they can signpost you to your most local Mind association.
Joanna, what would you say, what role do you think leaders and influencers, we have a lot of influencers here, play in terms of dealing with mental health, but also attitudes towards mental health?
Well, I do think leadership shapes attitudes. If we talk even in organisations, that the leaders set the tone for the whole organisation, they absolutely shape attitudes and behaviours. And I think one of the most important things, as an example of our organisation, over 60% of our team, that's right from the trustees across the board, had lived experience, and lived experience shapes once you've gone through. So as an example, I have my own lived experience. Started when I was about 15 years old. I struggled with anxiety, had a number of suicide attempts, but the more I feel able as a leader to talk about some of the struggles that I've had and what would have helped. If I look back, it's a long time ago now, I'm quite old, I look back and I think to myself, what would have helped me? What could have been the approach taken with me when I was 14 or 15? And really that drives, if I'm honest, it's not just my professional experience that drives my work, it's also my lived experience. It's a driver to make sure that everybody who accesses our services has a good experience, that they're able to have better outcomes so that they can thrive in their life. That's what drives our organisation, and that should drive every leader. I think if we're trying to make a difference in society, connect your own dots. I think that's really important. Sometimes we other mental health and say, well, that's you have to have a mental health diagnosis, or you have to be at the point of sectioning for us to think about mental health. But mental health is a part of all of us. So I think from that perspective, from my Lewin's perspective, I think it's really important that leaders model good mental health, but are honest when your mental health isn't good.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because thinking about social media, and you can't help but wonder whether that actually has had more of a negative impact on general mental health, particularly amongst young people, is that actually it could be very powerful for when influencers are honest, I'm not feeling great today, rather than the kind of glossy, smiley pictures of a perfect life kind of thing, that actually that could be far more powerful in some ways. Nicola, what would you say, how can we reduce the stigma around mental health? I think we are making strides, but what do you feel we could do even more?
I think mainly talking, not keeping things to yourself, being kind to other people, and if there's something that's really, really bothering you, just phoning up a friend or a relative, somebody that just will listen, because I always believe a problem shared is a problem solved. And if you want to try and fix something, you don't know by talking about it what that other person might have a skill set for, to say this is how you can fix it, or this is what you can do.
Did you struggle to talk to people about things when you were in the thick of it, Horn for Better?
Yeah. I didn't really talk about anything what I was going through for a good 18 months. And it was only when my friend sitting there, Jane, started to pick up things that I all of a sudden wasn't answering the phone. I changed my appearance. I was very quiet. I wasn't on social media anymore. And he actually reached out to me and said, what is going on? I know something's going on. Do you want to talk about it? And within a week, I'd left. So it was, very, very hard. Because you're having to admit that you're being controlled and abused by somebody, and I wasn't ready to admit that.
Well, half the battle is seeing it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Before admitting it, even.
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions before I ask a final word? So I'd like to go through with each of you just a final message you'd like to leave with people. So Joanna, could you start?
I think the final message is you're not alone, and I would say for family members and friends, or even colleagues who think that somebody might be struggling, reach out, ask twice.
As somebody that works with companies that in turn work with mental health, my message would be never underestimate the power that you all have to make a huge difference to somebody's life.
Yeah, pretty much what Faye and Joanna have said. Speak out, ask for help. There's nobody that's going to judge you, and somebody will always have been wearing your shoes, so definitely talk about it.
I think mine is love yourself a bit more, because I think we're all our worst enemies sometimes and our most critical judges. So if you could just wake up in the morning and just say to yourself, yeah, I like myself today, that will start your day off and make a bit of a difference.
I'd like to add my one, is to genuinely ask people, how are you? And want to hear the answer as well. I think that's something as well that all of us can do, isn't it? Do we have any questions before we close this? I want to make sure this is an open space, and I'm sure that all my experts here will be very happy to talk to you if you'd rather talk privately to someone. Oh, hang on, we have one question over here. I didn't know.
Hi, so I'm somebody that has anxiety and low mood. I'm at a point now where family and friends are very supportive, work knows about it, but at home you have those days where you just can't do anything, or a couple of days. I find that's really hard getting back onto the sort of routine after that time. What would you give advice for trying to sort of pick up getting back into a routine after you've had all those low periods?
Joanna, do you want to answer this one?
So I think that the first thing, and it goes back to what Donna has said, is be kind to yourself. I think sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, or we get pressure from other places that we have to get back up quickly. It's okay not to. You know, sometimes on mental health, it's a journey, isn't it? And it goes up and it goes down. It's like a wave, I suppose. So I think the first thing is to be kind to yourself, to not feel like you have to get up and, you know, run back into a routine. And I think if you've got family and friends around you, how can they support you practically might be a solution. But also maybe just getting involved in a support group. We talk about scaffolding. So in the times where things are really tough and the wave is a little bit down, you've got a building scaffold around you, so that the good times, you don't really need them as much, but in the down times, you have mechanisms in place to support you. But I think the biggest thing is to be kind to yourself.
Well, thank you ever so much for all your advices. I mean, it's one of those conversations that we should be having more, isn't it? So thank you so much. Next up in